Loki, that's my finger. This is Loki. This is Sam. Not Sam, the behaviorist that works for me. This is a little pit mix named Sam. And this is the roadmap to success. I'm going to give this to you as soon as you SIT. One of the things I like to do is wait for the dog to do the thing that I want and then reward them when they do it on their own rather than directing them every single time. We direct our dogs a lot. And so if I'm just kind of, now I've got these high value training treats, they're very interesting as you can tell, and I'm just going to wait, and as soon as Sam SITs, then I'm going to reward her with the treat. And so after a while the dog learns if I just do this on my own, then I get whatever the reward is. Now sometimes they'll lose interest like this and just wander off, but I don't think it'll be for too long. So, all right, so in this session, basically, Loki is a puppy, he's 6 months old. He's going to be in our puppy socialization class, so that's really going to help. He's not as confident as I would like to see him, and he's going to be a pretty big dog. And so he was a little bit more aggressive when I came in than she was. I think she's aggressive more of a nervous way. I think he's not quite sure what he's doing. I think he's following her a little bit. See if I manipulate you into an SIT. Well, we'll just be patient and wait because this is going to be about 20 minutes anyways. All right, so one of the things I talked to the Guardians about is, I might as well go over it now, is what I call coffee for closers, which means I'm going to reward the dog that does what I want. So if I were to tell them to SIT and they're both sitting here and one of them SITs and the other one doesn't, or one SITs right away and the other one does it 30 seconds later, I'm only going to reward the dog that does it right away, the first position. After a while, that will motivate the secondary dog to start competing for that performance or for that reward. And then now you have both the dogs. Now if both dogs come at the same time and promote the same initiative, then I would give them the same reward. But otherwise we're rewarding one dog for basically coming in second. All right, now the Guardians also, I think, did a little bit of, had structured things a little bit to have the dogs compete for their attention. You're gonna pick that up and take my water away. Does he like to take water bottles?
No.
Okay, do we give him water bottles?
Empty ones.
Okay, don't give them, ever give your puppy anything to chew on that they're not allowed to have on a regular basis. Loki, here. Loki, come here. Sam, why don't you come over here? It's gonna ruin my idea. That's okay, no. Let's try to do it the positive way. Loki, come here. There you go, Sam. Loki, come here. So I try to teach him to drop if he brings it over here. Loki, fetch. It's like, you're crazy. I don't know what fetch means. So to teach a dog to drop, he doesn't fetch very well. And it's because his Guardians, I think, have tried to take things from him. And that creates an issue of where the dog doesn't want to give the item away. Now, if he takes it and holds it up a little bit, we'll see if I can actually do it. There you go. So notice I'm not going for the object. Now, right now, it's a higher value item because we started going for it, so he didn't want to give it up. But what you want, and that's a higher value item because he's not normally allowed to have it. This is why we don't want to give our dogs socks or shoes or plastic bottles, because they can't tell the difference between when they're allowed to have and when they're not allowed to have. And so basically, when the dog has something in its mouth, we go over, we touch the treat to the nose, and just wait. Don't give them any commands. As soon as they drop it, this should be a low value item, thing that he's allowed to have at any point. Then he drops the ball, you pop the treat in his mouth and say the word drop. Whenever you're giving a treat, always say the command word after the treat goes in the mouth, right after. And after a while, the dog is happy to drop things because that means that you're going to get a reward. And so practice on low value items, and eventually when he does have a water bottle or a remote or something he's not allowed to have, you say drop, he just goes in auto response and does the same thing. Now, the dogs are basically a little under exercised. She's not a super high energy dog, but he's a puppy and he definitely needs more exercise throughout the day. So I told the Guardians, whenever he gets rambunctious, they should interpret that as his way of saying, I need more exercise. Now, dog exercise is different than human exercise. Human exercise, like I worked out this morning, I did a 30-minute interval training workout, and that's good for me for the day. For dogs, they need it sprinkled throughout the day. One of the things the Guardians might want to consider is getting what's known as a Go Dog Go. iFetch also makes a machine that does this, but it's an automatic fetching machine. It lets the dog play fetch with itself. Now, if your dogs can't figure out who you are, let me know and I can come by and show you how to do that. But basically what we want to do is fetch the dog. They were both pretty interested in the laser, but not manically so it's okay for them. Taking a walk and putting on like a dog backpack filled with a couple bottles of water or some sand or something like that can help make the walk more productive. It doesn't always have to be a marathon, but it should be sprinkled throughout the day. And what I'd recommend the Guardians do is start an exercise journal. Just get a tablet or a notebook, write down the day at the top, write each dog's name, and then write the time and how many fetches, then the time for each dog. and then the number of how long the walk was, or how many laser revolutions around the house, or whatever the exercise is. You might want to also Google scent games, teaching a dog to practice tracking things with their scent. German Shepherds are very good at doing that. That's why we use them as bomb dogs and drug dogs, but it is mentally stimulating for them. So even just taking some cheese and throwing it on the ground around here, he's got to lick up the cheese in between the blades of grass. That makes him work for his food, which will help his self-confidence, and also prolong the process. So, okay, so let me see, what else do we want to go over? I went over petting, the importance of rules and structure. The dogs really didn't have any rules and structure. Actually, let me back up. For the exercise journal, write down the times and the exercise and the quantities, and also write down if there's a fight between the dogs or a barking incident or something that goes on. Write down the times you feed them, and then at the end of the day, give each dog a letter grade. Here, buddy. Drop. Sit. That reminds me, I need to go over that for you, don't I? Sit. Oh, what do you sit? I want to take the water, but I don't want to snatch. If I snatch it, that'll make it a higher value item. I go sit. Then I can pick up my item. When I pick up my item, it's my item. So I'm going to pick it up casually like that. If I snatch it, that implies that I don't think I have the authority to have it. I have to be very confident when I'm dealing with dogs. Okay, so he does a little bit of mouthing and nipping. So if we're playing with him, we want to play with tug toys and stuff like that. Anytime he tugs, that was not a very good job. I usually like to yelp more like a high pitch, like a little girl, like, ah! And then you would freeze for a second. Now, she doesn't like that, so maybe don't have guests do that around her, because we don't want her coming over and figuring something out. But basically, you yelp and then freeze for a second. This is how dogs communicate with each other. That was too hard. And then after a second or two, if he calms down, then you can go back to playing with him again. But anytime his teeth touch your skin, even if it's accidental, even if it's not when playing with him, yelp every time. Now, right there, pet him and say sit. That's passive training, which would happen off camera, and I'll talk about in a sec. Now, the more that we, what was I just talking about? Lost my train of thought. The nipping. All right, so the yelping is the first thing. Second thing we want to do is we want to carry a nylabone or an antler or something in our back pocket. And what I do is I pull it out. If I just give it to the dog, it won't be interested. So if this is the dog's head, this is the nose, I want to tease it here, and it looks here, and I tease it this way. I want to kind of redirect the dog's attention towards it, but teasing him until he wants to latch onto it, then let him pull it away, and then let him take his trophy away and go chew it in peace. Now you've redirected him to an appropriate chew toy, and you're also helped the dog stop chewing on you. That's the second thing that I do. The third thing I do is if the dog gets really mouthy and nippy or gets aggressive when you're doing these things, now, a lot of times that means the puppy needs more rest. So then that would be a time to put him in his playpen or into his kennel so that he can kind of just get a little bit of rest himself. Now, we went over the rules. We have 3 dogs that live in the neighborhood, and I think that the lack of rules has confused Sam. That and being petted at times where she was doing inappropriate things has confused her in thinking that her job is to protect the humans. So the more that we have rules and structure, the more that the humans act like leaders in the dog's eyes, and the more the dog will count on the humans as handling things. So we went over a couple of rules. If you grip it a little bit more with your left arm and then your right arm, you're kind of covering up the mic a little bit, and I'm far away, I'm worried you might not be able to hear me. Some of my friends would say it would be probably better if you can't hear me, but I'm guessing this capacity people would want to hear. So, all right, so basically the importance of rules, dogs go through life probing to determine where boundaries and limits are and to determine who the leaders are, because the leaders are the ones who enforce the rules. Being consistent is really, really important for dogs and how they learn. They probe to wait for somebody to correct them. And then they might probe each time they try to go around an object or whatever it is to be thorough. Well, if we correct half the way and then the other half we stop, they're like, oh, I have to ask 50 times and the 60th time I get my way, or whatever it is. So basically, if we have rules and we consistently follow them, the dog's going to keep on testing us, and if we meet the challenge every single time, after a while they'll learn to stop testing us. That's a rule. I'm never allowed on the furniture at all, which is one of the new rules. Now, dogs learn through consistency, repetition, and good timing. You have 3 seconds to correct or reward the dog for them to have the ability to make the connection. Now, it also has to be repeated over and over. That's why it's so important for connection. Now, also, it's important to remember anything our dog is doing when we pet it is what we're reinforcing. If a dog jumps up on us, which I saw happen here earlier, and the person pets the dog a little bit, it's rewarding the dog for doing that. If the dog is nervous or anxious or fearful, we can also make them unbalanced in those capacities by petting them. So if your dog is nervous, you can touch the dog and let the dog know I'm here with you without amplifying it. But if the dog is doing something we don't like and we pet him, this is how most of us train our dogs to do the wrong things. It steals remote control, we get up and chase the dog. It chews our shoes, we get up and chase the dog. It sits in front of us, we don't do a damn thing. Well, the thing that we want, we ignore, and the thing that we don't want, we give attention. For dogs, attention itself is validated. And so if the dog doesn't know what's going, or no dog knows doing the wrong thing gets my human attention, we're going to continually address and correct, or we're going to force the dog doing the wrong thing. Even just looking at the dog when it's doing the wrong thing is validating and rewarding. So these dogs like to jump up on the window at the back door as a way of communicating to come in. I went through a technique that'll help the dogs learn to sit at the door, but if we just even look at the door and then look away, well, it's working. They'll keep on trying to do it. So some of the rules we went over: not being allowed in the furniture for at least 30 days or as long as the problem's still going on. After that period, furniture with an invitation and only for good behavior. So if the dog starts barking, it has to get down. And it should be only with an invitation from the human. Now, the way that I ask a dog to get down is I would touch the dog's nose with the treat and then toss it right on the ground. And the dog will jump down on the ground and lick it up. When it does, I would say the word off. And then at that point, I'm going to block and not allow the dog to be back on the couch. Now, right now, she is also allowed on the couch, and she was kind of babied because she came from a really crappy situation. And it's a normal thing that we want to do, but we only do it for a limited period of time. Providing the dog without any rules or structure can actually confuse them into thinking that they have more authority, which is, I think, part of her problem. So, not being allowed in the furniture is number one. Having to sit before we let him in or out of the door would be number two. Go to the door and say, sit once. The dog doesn't sit, walk, within 3 seconds, walk away. Don't repeat command words. The more you repeat it, the less you mean it as far as dogs are concerned. Walk away from the door for 1 minute. At this point, the dog wants to go outside and you don't. So you have leverage by controlling the dog's access point. After 1 minute, come back to the door and tell the dog to sit again. If it doesn't sit this time, walk away for 2 minutes, then for 4 minutes, then for 8 minutes. And as soon as you go to the door and say sit, and the dog sits, you open the door, let that dog out. If only one of the dogs sits, let the dog who sat out and not the other dog. At first do it whatever direction they want to do, and then eventually do it with both directions. Eventually the dogs will go sit at the door as a way of asking to go in or out. When they do that, make sure that we do go over and let them in or out. Otherwise they will revert back to the old way until we've gotten enough practice in the new way. Other rules: dogs should not be allowed in the kitchen when we're preparing food. Should not be allowed around any human who's eating. We definitely don't want to feed the dog people food, because that confuses them into thinking that they can, that violating that boundary. Dogs normally will stay 7 feet away from anybody with a high value item. We also went over structured meal times for the dog. So we're going to feed Sam first because she's the older dog, and the younger dog is going to keep on challenging for her. When she's eating, he's not allowed in the kitchen. When she's eating, we're going to say her command word to eat the moment she takes her first bite of food. We do that for about 2 months, and after a while, if her word is feast, you say feast, and she'll come in to eat, because when she hears the word feast, there's food in her mouth. When he hears the word feast, there's no food in his mouth, so it doesn't mean anything to him. But if both dogs see that the humans are controlling the meal time, the human eats first, they have more authority, and then the human's got my back. When I'm eating, they're not letting Sam in here, so the dog feels comfortable and doesn't have to wolf down its food as fast. And eating is something that's really important for dogs, so just get in the habit of doing that. The people food, like I said, it confuses them, so let's avoid doing that. Feeding the dogs 2 or 3 times a day is ideal. You don't want to just do it once a day. I also want to petting with the purpose of passive training. Petting with the purpose is asking the dog to do something before we pet it. If the dog comes and nudges at me or paws at me and I pet it, I'm reinforcing the dog that, yeah, you're the boss of me, because when you give me an order, I follow it. So from now on, when the dog comes and nudges the human's going to give the dog a counter order and tell it to sit. When it sits, we pet under the chin and just say the word sit. Don't say good sit or anything else, just sit. Then you can pet the dog as long as you want after that. If the dog's already sitting, ask it to come and sit over here, or ask it to lay down. It just has to do something that's change its state to earn that affection. Now, after a while, what will happen is the dog's going to start sitting in front of you to prepay for attention. And when it does that, make sure we recognize it, pet it, and say the word sit. Never pat a dog on top of the head. Always try to pet under the chin. Always try to avoid direct sunlight when you're filming. And let me see. And avoid saying good dog or good boy or good girl. Just say the command word. It's much more efficient for the dog. It helps them build better associations. Now, passive training is simply recognizing the dog when it does things that we want. So if he were to walk up to me on his own, I would just pet him and say, come. If he sits down next to me, I'm going to pet him and say, sit. I'm going to reward him for the desired actions that he does that I want. The more we do that, the more when I ask him to sit or come or lie down, the more inclined he will be to do that. Now, I use a couple watchwords for this to help people won't realize how often they pet the dog without a purpose. So the one I usually recommend is paycheck. So right there, excellent. So paycheck means I think you may have forgotten to pet the dog with a purpose. So if somebody says paycheck to me and I stop petting the dog, I tell the dog to sit or do something, then I start petting it again, and then I can tell the person, I asked him to sit before you came in, you just didn't see it. But it's better for us not to argue in front of the dog. Now, passive training, I usually use the word testify or recognize. So testify means the dog just did something you could reward and you're about to miss out. Remember, you have 3 seconds. Somebody watched it, that was 1 second. They told you that's 2 seconds. You have 1 second now to start petting your dog. So just look at your dog. If it's standing there, assume it came and pet it and say come. If it sits, pet it and say sit or whatever it is. Come up with funny command words. I like to say crash when a dog lies down. But the more funny command words that you can help, especially when you have dogs that have, these are not aggressive dogs under any way, shape, or form, but they have some aggressive behaviors that are just starting. But coming up with fun command words can really help with that. So that's why I like to use, crash or whatever it is. I get in trouble when I fly with one of my dogs. They're like, the airlines don't like you saying crash. But it's funny if you do it at home and people laugh and recognize it. Come. Now she has a tendency to, I'm not going to talk about it because in the video above I talked about a whole bunch of tips and tricks for her. But remember, if she bares her teeth or growls, she's not being aggressive, she's saying I'm uncomfortable. So we want to practice the focus exercise as well as the greeting and the walks that I talked about in the video above, which really help. For her, I'd like to see the guardians try to have a person come by, a new person every other day at minimum for the next week. Once every day would be great. And neighbors are wonderful for this because they can come by, it's convenient, they come by real quick, they do the focus exercise, follow the instructions in the video above, and then they leave. And remember, tell the guest, don't look at her, don't try to talk to her, don't try to pet her. The more they try to pet her when she's not sure about who they are, the more she's going to be standoffish. The more they ignore her, the more she's going to be interested in coming towards them. Let me see, what else? Rollerblade if you can. I call it dog skiing, but getting a dog backpack. There are things you can do to exercise the dog that'll make it a little bit easier. Now also for her, socialization is going to be really important up until 9 months. So try to find play dates for her. The puppy class, one of the things we do in our puppy class is we actually have a Facebook group where we invite the guardians of all the dogs to network with each other. You might find somebody that's in your neighborhood that has a dog that's in puppy class that's close by that she can practice going and playing with that dog and vice versa. She has a dog here she can play with, but it's one dog. Just like us, we don't develop good social skills talking to one person. We need a whole variety of people and situations to challenge us to grow. Now, she's chewing on a little bit of a branch from a shrub. Do we have any dead branches out here that are, okay, so make sure she has some of those. Give maybe a jolly ball. Sometimes they have big outdoor bones and things like that. Give her some things to play with out here that'll help her feel a little bit better. Sit. Yes. I'm trying to think of it. Is there anything else I'm forgetting? Oh, I went through a target exercise and I went through the focus exercise. Really with Loki, we did a leave it exercise. Make sure that you're gradually pulling your hand up. Don't pull it fully away. Gradually do it. And the idea is to make the dog stay away from things for progressively longer and longer periods of time. When you're doing the targeting exercise, karate chop close to your dog's head first, and then gradually further and further away. Always keep your hand at a diagonal. Once I karate chop, don't come back to get the treat. Karate chop, and then once the dog puts his nose there, then put the treat there. Say the word target for that, or whatever other words you want to use if you want to use something other than target. The focus exercise is also something the guardians can do. And again, you want to get up to about 15 seconds on that second movement. Watch the video above it. It explains how to target. Now, if you or do the focus exercise. If you forget how to do the target exercise, you forget how to do focus or anything else, message me and let me know, and I can share videos with you. One last little thing that will help with Sam. Sam is a little insecure, and I can tell that she's starting to go down the road to potential separation anxiety. Just a little insecurities, and it's a problem that you don't want to deal with. So one of the things that we can do is the mom can, and everybody, we can teach her to stay. She really follows the mom and the family around. So if mom can actually tell her to stay and then get up and go to use the bathroom and come back and then release her, or stay and go get a drink of water or change clothes or whatever it is, now we're helping the dog practice being alone. Right now she follows mom around. I bet you she probably goes in the bathroom with mom. And so that is that neediness, if we keep on allowing it to continue, grows greater and greater, and then you eventually get to the point where the dog freaks out if it's not without that guardian or any guardian. She has another dog. It's not that bad right now, but we want to make sure that it doesn't get to that because it's a really frustrating problem to deal with. Now, last thing I'm going to talk about is the jumping exercise. The dogs like to jump up on humans when they come home. When a dog jumps up on a human when they just arrive, it's a dog's way of saying claiming their property. Now, we definitely don't want Sam to do that. Either one of them do it with Gus, because if one does it, the other one might do it. And also, sometimes people are just, you have two breeds of dogs that are probably the most prejudiced types of dogs that or people have prejudice against. They're great dogs. They don't have to be aggressive. Most of the time they're not. But people have seen one case, they just label all German Shepherds as aggressive. He's going to be a really big dog, so we really want him to have good impulse control. I was fast enough that time. I do a jumping exercise. So what we do is we call or text ahead. We put the dog on a leash. We put the other dog outside or in a room or in a kennel. So we're only dealing with one dog at a time. We stop on the leash and we wait for that and let the person come in. It stays just right outside the dog's reach, sideways to the dog. And as soon as the dog calms down, we turn and start engaging. As soon as the dog gets excited, we turn away. Remember, excited is not happy. And then back and forth we'll go, and eventually you'll be able to do it more and more. The dog stays calmer and calmer, and the dog eventually learns when I'm calm and seated, the humans are all over me. As soon as I jump up and I'm excited, they lose all interest. Since I want the human's interest, I'm going to do whatever works. So after enough repetitions, dogs will continue doing that, just sitting instead of jumping up. They won't continue doing that, I should say. Now I have another technique for that, so if that doesn't work or it slows it down but doesn't stop it completely, let me know. I can show you the other technique. It's the fourth quadrant of operant conditioning. I'm not going to get it in this video, but it's a nice technique. But again, always try to find a way to let the dogs figure things out themselves. What I try to do is recreate situations and give the dog only one really opportunity for me to reward them. And if they do all the other things, I just ignore it because I've controlled the situation. When we have two dogs together and you try to do it at the same time, it's really difficult. So always try to get the dogs to come to work with the dogs one at a time. Last thing, dogs that are insecure are typically the most reactive. Neither one of these dogs knows very many commands. Now you can teach them to lay down by every time they lay down, passive training, petting them to say crash. But teaching them new tricks and commands will boost their self-esteem and confidence. And also